all systems go. Clear for liftoff. What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka ToeTagginTambo, back for another edition of the First Look Show. Week 6 ahead. Break it all down. We got 10 games over on DraftKings. Got my guy Degenerate75 with me here as always. And if you're just joining us or you're here for the first time, do us a favor on the way in. Hit that like button and then make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Almost 8,300 now. The drive for 9K for the giveaway. And then 10K is the biggest giveaway. So we want to get to 10K as soon as possible. If you haven't subscribed, just click the button. Takes 2 seconds and it's free. And some don't know this, but it doesn't cost any money. You can just click subscribe. You're good to go. You're all in. It's just for the YouTube channel. Degen, bring you in, man. Week 6. It's moving pretty quick here.
It is. And I guess the exciting thing is the scoring is finally up in DFS. But the bad news is like now we're getting those shootout games at noon. And it's like if you didn't have that stack, you pretty much are cooked. This is the first week where it's like, oh, I didn't have a Burrow stack. Well, I guess I have the afternoon to myself.
Yeah, if you had the Stone last week, though, and I know you did, you might have been somewhat interested in that. We did break it down in the takedown breakdown, and a lot of the members had that going with the F rating for the Ravens. We'll be talking about the Ravens this week. You saw the cover boy, Jaden Daniels. His MVP odds have dropped 45-1. I think it's down to 11-1 now. So interesting, a rookie winning the MVP. We'll have to wait and see. But before I get into it, I do just want to show off a couple of the winners from last week. So I'm going to pull this up for you guys first here quickly, and so we can go to this. I'll swap it over and see, but there was 2 people. We had the random draw. Roxby 888 said, great show. Love to see the big guy in here. Top quarterback, Joe Burrow, who just edged out Lamar Jackson last week. So if you're out there, hit us up, info@shipitnation.com. Show us a screenshot of your YouTube account. We'll get you set up with a free month, all access with Shiptimizer. That's the $99 package. So get you set up with that there. And then James, I'm going to pull this one up here. But I don't know if you saw this or not. We did look because he submitted it, but I'll show it to you. Drew B was the winner of the big guy last week, which we'll pull up again this week, but just almost filled it, 2474 of the 2,500, but that was his lineup. What do you think?
I mean, I'm never a huge fan of spending so much money on my stacks. Like by the time you put Higgins, Chase, and Burrow in a stack, you basically need like a 98, 99% outcome from those guys. But he got it. So, I mean, in hindsight, he looks like a genius. It was just, I always caution people putting too much money into their stacks, especially with 2 elite receivers like that, because you basically are going to need 2 touchdowns from both of them. And that doesn't happen very often, but it happened this week. And then he just happened to have all the nice peripheral pieces in there. So, it's a lineup I would have never built, but you know what? Sometimes you got to have the nuts to build some crazier lineups to take down a big GPP.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this one too, so I'll just hit it quick for those that maybe didn't catch it. If you want to go back and check it out, the Takedown Breakdown covers it more in depth and is all process related, breaking down how people got to these, some of the player pools, the winning lineups, all that stuff. But the Stone really loved the passing game, and the only thing it had highlighted was Burrow, Higgins, Chase on that side, and on the other side, it was Lamar, Derrick Henry, and Zay Flowers. There was some nice lineups that got to Zay Flowers in this spot, but it was a really bad spot for Cincy on the ground. So if you could make it work, and if you knew Darius was going to break the Slayton, you can get him in very easily with Kenneth Walker. There was, Kraft was already there. Broncos were there. So you kind of just built the same lineup as everybody else. And that's why we even saw 2nd through 4th was a very similar lineup to this with Zay Flowers instead of Henry chopped up in the $20 Millie Maker. Just like you said, when you go that expensive stack, it essentially forces you on to the other stuff. So anything else you want to add there? If not, I'll pull up this week's.
Just that I had a lot of Darius Slayton myself because of you and Mayo on that Friday show. You guys were, I swear to God, had the second half of the show could have just been called the Darius Slayton part of the show.
I was so glad he ended up on the optimal, so we have something to talk about this week, because when that show ended recording, I looked at Pat and I said, what did we just do? I was like, we literally just spent half an hour on Darius Slayton. This guy better break it, and luckily he did. I pulled it up here. If you guys aren't in it yet, this is the best tournament on DraftKings. It's a $5, 5 max. 2,000 entries. They did dock it back a little bit, but I'm confident we'll fill it. A great payout structure, $1,250 to first, $150 to 10th, very balanced as you can see in front of you. And it's a $5 5 max. Min cash gets $10. So go to my X at ToeTagginTambo. Join it there if you're a member. It's already pinned in the NFL channel. So, all right, let's go to the Stone. Going to bring that up here next, and we can start on it for this week. We like to get right into it, but I got the games, just the shell. But this is what people saw last week here, right? DJM was the F pass defense. Spoiler alert, checks notes, as you like to say, didn't get any better after Joe Burrow just completely roasted them. So still an F for the Ravens, but this game got the big boy total, and it's got Lamar Jackson versus Jaden Daniels. First thoughts on this first look show for this game?
I tried to tell you those grades, they mean something. I look at those. You were asking me about, like, last week we were talking about, do you ever look at cornerback versus wide receiver matchups? I'm like, no, but I do look at teams rushing and passing grades because that stuff matters, especially every week we're getting more and more data to solidify those numbers and make them more accurate, which then we convert to a grade, right? So I feel even more confident as we're moving here into week 6 with them.
Yeah, it was something last week too with the Bengals. They were like 74% pass versus their run split. And then again, the Ravens were the same. They were F versus the pass, A versus the rush. It's like you're not running on them, and a little bit, sure, but I'm saying you're not really going to be able to. But if you get there, it's going to be through the air. And even with the first AFC North battle of the season, the potential for it to go under, just because sometimes that happens in those games, it went the opposite and completely went off like the total suggested at 49.5. What's your first thoughts on this game with the big boy total? And do you buy into any of the stuff with Lamar Jackson, 21-1? Versus NFC opponents? They're not ready for him. He wasn't ready.
Well, my first instinct is like, this game is going to be crazy popular. Jaden Daniels is going to be, I mean, he's so good at fantasy already. Now he's going to be in a script where they're almost certainly going to have to be aggressive. The Ravens and Lamar have shown that they're not afraid to get in a shootout. They can push the pace of a game. Derrick Henry loves to bust big ass runs, which keeps the pace of the games up. I have a feeling that Daniels and McLaurin are both probably going to be something ridiculous this week. Like Daniels 20% would not surprise me this week. This is just a great game environment, over a 50-point total, which has been very rare this year. And then Daniels just offers such an incredible floor with an incredible ceiling that, like, he's just gonna. You better get all in on him if you want to have any leverage on him this week, because he's gonna be popular. Yeah,
the chat loves it, and I'll tell you this: it's early in the week. I don't always listen to myself by the end of the week, but I kind of want to just fade this game stack. Like, I know the total's big. It's 52.5. I'm monitoring this. I don't even place a lot of sports bets, but I really just think there's a possibility. I know how bad this Ravens passy is, but at home, Lamar versus Daniels, they want to show up each other, keep the other guy off the field, run the ball. We still have Derrick Henry. You can run on these Commanders. I do think there's going to be some leverage opportunities here, and I do have a little bit of interest in the under on this game, because I just think sometimes when you get these spots where everyone just thinks it's the nut spot to go over, you actually see the opposite, because both teams and defenses really step up. They want to prove that their guy is the guy. And so the defenses step up just as much on the other side. It won't be a popular take no matter what day of the week we get to, you can tell. The other thing I want to stick to is what I talked about. The quarterback pricing is broken. It's still kind of broken on the expensive guys. Like, that's still not expensive enough. But there is going to be guys in the 5K, the 6K range. There's a guy less than 5K this week that people are talking about, that there's other ways that you can go and stack it up. So this will be popular.
How about Brian Robinson Jr.? I need to do a mea culpa on this guy. Like, he's good. Like, I faded him so hard at best ball. I just didn't like him. I didn't think he was that good. I didn't like his his position with the Commanders, but like, he owns that backfield on first and second down, and they run the ball efficiently enough, and they get to the goal line enough that, like, maybe you just go play him, hope he pilfers a couple touchdowns. This game's like 21-17, and you basically got the one guy you needed from this game and faded all the other noise. And that could be the way to get in here, get out, and still have huge leverage on the field.
Yeah, I don't know if it is Daniel Jones. Sounds like Sean, but not one of those. One. He's 21-1. He's lost once to them. So that's the thing. It's like, if it is him, great. But the point would be, there's something to that as well. I think, like, obviously he's just been so good. He's really good against the Bengals too. He almost fumbled it away last week, but not even homerism. I just think there's still 10 games. We saw it last week. Green Bay Rams was the game that everybody was talking about and all over, and it did not end up being what was required. You needed a little bit from it, a couple pieces. You can easily do that within this game and just get little pieces there back and forth. I don't have anything else on this game, but the aforementioned Packers are in the next game, and it's the Packers versus the Cardinals. And funny enough, still a pretty big total here, closer spread in Green Bay. What's your thoughts on this one, D-Gen?
Well, my thoughts are Jordan Love kind of let me and I guess most of DFS players down last week. He wasn't even that bad. It just wasn't the game just never really took off. The Rams never really pushed it like we thought they would. But the Cardinals, once again, a team not afraid to give up some points. The Packers are at home where Jordan Love has been better. And it seems like he's going to have that condensed passing tree again. So am I going to have some forgiveness in my heart for Jordan Love? Probably.
Yeah, and the other thing last week, we were, like you said, almost all in on it. It made a lot of sense in good spots. There was teams that you could build with it pretty easily. I know some people were making fun of like the fact he lost some of his guys and yet people hopped on, but that's the whole point. When the target tree tightens up, that's when we do want to get involved, and that's what ended up happening. And yes, it was only Tucker Kraft, who, by the way, huge price increase this week for him, and rightfully so after another big game. But definitely think this is another spot that we can target. Both defenses, look at those grades, not the best. The total's still there. The spread's close enough. I think the fact that it's in Green Bay is, not as ideal as if it was in Arizona, but I still think it's going to be fine going back and forth. And then even on the other side, I think there is like C+, not the best. There's definitely some passing opportunities. The Kyler Murray secured the bag with Call of Duty or whatever. Did you see that one? He said, thanks for the trolling and the memes because now he secured the bag. He's got the deal with the Call of Duty thing, but I don't know if he's going to be in that form yet. I think it's another couple of weeks still yet to go. So this passing game could be solid here also. I just think it's going to be a different target spot. And it kind of talked about, talking about what you mentioned earlier with like these morning games, just needing them. This could be one of the ones that you end up needing, right? They're passing it a ton. I think this is going to be a good opportunity early on in the week to get after. So nothing else there. Let's move on. I'll kick it over to you. It sounds like, again, the stone, I know we always put the quarterback at hand, but it sounds like they could be bringing out Drake May this week. And so we'll have to see how that goes. But it's the Patriots at home versus the Texans. Patriots just look horrible on paper, but what's your thoughts on this one?
My first thoughts are give me that Patriots defense. $2,400 at home. CJ Stroud, he did not look very good after Nico Collins was out, right? You think, oh, he's still got Diggs, he's still got Dell. Hell, even Xavier Hutchinson's not bad for a fourth wide receiver. And they just couldn't move the ball after Collins was out. It was like a completely different offense. And he had happy feet. He looked like a different quarterback back there. And I think this is a game that just reeks of like a 17-13 type game. And the Patriots, win this game and get it done by just harassing Stroud the whole game. Part of me wants to go get a little Tank Dell, but with him priced up to 6,200, I'm wondering if like maybe this passing game's just broke without old Nico in there. And from what I'm hearing, there's no chance he's going to play this week.
Yeah, they adjusted it, right? It went immediately from day to day to week, so it doesn't sound good for him. Dell was actually not even really that involved. Even after he went out, I saw it was just such a low snap percentage and target share that he was getting. So it was like essentially, just an interesting way that it played out. But I do think you could be right in that situation. And the other thing that was funny, I called this on the show last week, but it was like basically the minute they tell me it's going to be Antonio Gibson and not Ramondre, I was like, yeah, it's going to be Ramondre. It's just going to be the way it works out. They paid him. The guy's too good. It's just a spot, right? So I'm not thinking about him too much here, but 6,100 may be interesting for tournaments. Maybe you could pair him up with that D, like you said, get a little combo pack there for 8,500, but just Patriots D alone could be the way to go at home against CJ Stroud, who's down weapons. And then what's the news on Joe Mixon right now? Did you see anything on that?
I mean, like I thought he was going to be back this last week and he still wasn't back. So I'm wondering if it's one of those lingering injuries that's just going to like every week we're going to keep thinking he's back and he's not. I have not heard any update, but I was thinking he was going to be back last week and it sounds like he wasn't even particularly close to playing this past week. So I would say 50-50 at best.
Yeah, Kenny's in here talking about this. I mean, yeah, that I agree. And I think that's just something you were seeing early on in the season already. It was like, for sure going to be Wandale last week because there's no Neighbors. Like it's different. He's probably better off when Neighbors is in there. It's, situational stuff like that. We just saw it last night. Everyone's complaining about Worthy. Yeah, they probably should use Worthy more and all that, but who says, like, the chat made some good points in our Discord. Like, is he a premium route runner? No, he's fast. And that can work in your favor because you get the ball in your playmaker's hands and they go do something with it. But that's the key, right? He's used to having Rice in there. Guess who's open? Worthy. And guess how fast he is? Very fast, like I already said. So that's the difference in some of this stuff. And you just got to wonder. I mean, obviously, those guys did have big games last year where they rotated when Collins was out, Dell, and I forget who the other guy was, but was it Noah Brown last year?
Yeah, Noah Brown was their guy that would have the big games as the third wide receiver last year.
Yeah, they just trioed it up. Like one would always be out and injured and the other guy would be in. So I don't know. Maybe it's with adding Diggs. It's a little bit different dynamic, but I do think that's at least somewhat interesting to talk about. Their defense has been pretty good, but again, I don't think it changes completely when you look at, different quarterback, all this stuff that's going to be.
And don't sleep. Diggs and Dell's price are both up. They're pricing like Collins is going to be out. So you're paying a premium for those guys. And they have not, if you look at their underlying metrics, both Diggs and Dell, neither of them justify those price tags if you look at their underlying metrics so far this year.
One last thing too, 10-game slate. We're making pretty good time early on, but just want to ask quick. Do you think Houston D will pick up steam at 3,600 if Drake May is going to be the guy that they put in? Do you think that's going to be a possibility?
For sure. But I don't know that that's necessarily a sharp play, because I think if they do play Drake May, I think you're going to see at most 20 passes from him. I think it's going to be a very conservative game plan from the Patriots. Rather, even if they get behind, I think they'll keep it conservative. So I wouldn't love the Texans' $3,600 defense because, outside of throwing a shutout, I just don't think they're going to get a ton of chances to score.
We're thinking alike here. That's why I asked the question. I was about to say, if that's the case, I just don't see them unleashing him right away, where it's going to be he gets to come out, throw 40 times and make a bunch of mistakes or give those opportunities to the Texans. So if they did steam up, it's the same conversation you just had around the wide receivers. There's a premium involved in the matchup to start with. It's not because of May. It's just because they're priced and they're up against the Patriots low total. But just to say there is a price involved with it, and it's not necessarily the best spot to go.
Yeah, that's what made the Broncos defense so nice yesterday, is the Raiders will let Minshew, throw the ball around and make stupid fucking mistakes just like he did, right? And so there's some appeal to that. But Gardner Minshew is not Drake May, and the Patriots are not the Raiders, and they have different ways of handling their quarterbacks.
Yeah, certainly. I think you should always be looking at. I know it's defense is such a high variance position. That's why we might cap it in MME, and we'll do little things like that where we're not capping it, meaning we'll stop at 20% max of any given defense because we want to spread it out a little bit. But something like the super chalk Broncos last week was for good reason. It was against a quarterback that they do let chuck it around, and Beetlebane brought it up. That was already said by DJ, and he kind of likes that. I agree there too. And then Juju, looking like a Pro Bowler last night. Yeah, he was looking pretty good. But again, just a product of probably a little bit of trust, the opportunities with no Rice, and then the setup of maybe Worthy's not quite as open, all that sort of thing where it just worked out. I think Juju's only 26 or 27. It just feels like he's been in the league forever, because I think he has, right? He's been playing for 7 or 8 seasons or something already. So Bucks at the Saints. We just saw these Saints last night. Kamara really let some people down. Do you think this is another spot where, what do you think people do with Kamara? Because he's 7,700. He was a letdown last night, but it's a pretty good matchup at home in the Dome. Decent totals on either side. Nothing crazy, but at least an opportunity there. So quick thoughts just on this game here, Saints-Bucks.
I would bet good money Alvin Kamara single-digit ownership. There's just looking at the pricing so far through the first 4 games, it looks like DraftKings has made a concerted effort to price a lot of these guys up. And $7,700 running backs that just let everybody down are not going to be wildly popular this week, especially when they only have a 20-point total. The Bucks defense is solid against the run. They got Vita Vea, stuff like that. And the Bucks have been playing from ahead a lot. So there's a good chance that it's not going to be a very favorable script. I think Kamara is a guy that's going to be a great leverage piece this week if you have the balls to play him. That would be my early week assumption.
Yeah, and I'm going to say that if people do get there by the end of the week, again, so far on the slate, I haven't really seen much at the running back position. Again, maybe later we pick up more spots, but let's just say he does. I do want to call it out. I know it's chasing, but is it chasing anymore? What? They're still not pricing this guy up. He's playing a bunch of snaps. He's getting a ton of targets. He's getting loose and wide open. Carr trusts him, but Shaheed has been the dude there. Olave looked invisible last night, and it's been fine. They trust Shaheed. He's getting more short passing work too. So I just think he's at least somewhat interesting in this spot. I know Jawan, the baby narrative, people were wanting him last night. It ended up being Foster Moreau, but I think Shaheed is a bit interesting there. Any quick thoughts on him?
It's crazy because I've always been an Olave slut, but Shaheed, if you just watch their games, he's clearly the number one guy. He gets more targets, he gets more down the field, he gets more air yards, he gets more red zone targets. It's like he's their dude.
Yeah, this is another one too. Carr did leave the game at the very end. I know it cost some people in showdown that needed him down the stretch there for that last drive, hoping that he could get him a few more points, but he did leave the game. So we'll have to wait and see what that looks like. Not sure if people think that will help or hurt a guy like Alvin Kamara, but I know the chat just talked about it, looking at the stone early. You get the rush defense with a D grade, so maybe that's a possibility there. He's getting opportunities. He over 20
maybe Taysom Hill's back this week, and we get a bunch of Taysom Hill at $4,000.
Yeah, that was the other disappointing thing is Kamara got probably 10 less opportunities than I thought he would last night, and there was no Taysom Hill. It's sort of the dream spot you're hoping for. It just didn't work out. Again, going against the Chiefs, anything can happen. But Bucks side, did you want to talk a little more on that, or do you have any? This is in New Orleans in the dome, all that. But do you have like Baker looked like he was dealing it in a couple of games this season. So, he's easy to stack. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that side?
He's my favorite player. I just, for whatever reason, I just cannot think of him as a fantasy quarterback, especially now that he's priced up to 6,500. I mean, he's now getting priced up with like the actual legit good fantasy quarterbacks, right? And so far this year, he has been that good. I just can't believe that they're going to continue to let him just pass it. And I also just don't believe he can continue to be this efficient. But at some point, I'm going to have to just accept that like Baker's a bad mofo, and maybe he is this guy that you can count on for 275 and 2 touchdowns every week.
Yeah, we'd prefer the 300 for the bonus, but it's kind of like...
I think I'm a Bucky Irving guy, though. I feel like that's where I want to get in this game. I feel like Bucky Irving is slowly starting to take over that backfield.
Yeah, I can think, too, also, if Carr is out, this will pick up steam at $2,600, and then maybe it is pounding it in there with Bucky Irving. What do you got, $8,000 for the combo pack to go up against these Saints? But there is the pass D on the board, and Baker's, I was just going to say, kind of fair. Godwin's still sub 7K. Is this like the Burrow, Chase, Higgins or something, or however you want to look at it? You can just...
If Baker Mayfield throws 5 touchdowns, I will do the show next week naked. All right. There's just no way that is happening. I love Baker, but he's just never going to throw 5 touchdowns in a game.
Yeah, I think you're right, but at least somewhat interesting here. I like Shaheed on the other side, but I like your Irving Buccaneers call, at least somewhat interesting for one of the lower total games so far. We've talked about it a little bit. Just the reason I brought up the Burrow stuff is like, it's very similar. The 70%, the D, the setup of the pricing, all of that. So it's at least interesting early on. Again, we got more games to get to, so let's do just that. Eagles coming off the bye, at home, big favorite, potential for a blowout here against the Browns. And the Browns just, they're looking for any way to get out of this Deshaun Watson contract. They just have to be at this point, but it's been real bad for Deshaun Watson and co.
Yeah, so like just first instinct, this just feels like a week I'm all in on Jalen Hurts. Like if he's ever going to have a get right week, it feels like he's going to do it at home. They're going to go out, beat the brakes off the shitty Browns. Only thing I'm concerned about is I'm pretty sure Devonta is going to be back from the concussion. I hear A.J. Brown is trending towards being back. Dallas Goedert's going to be there. Saquon's going to be there. So now we're back to you got to play Jalen Hurts, and you got to skinny stack him. Who's the right one to skinny stack him with? And that's always playing Russian roulette. So I want to play Hurts. I'm just nervous about who the hell I'm going to stack him with. And as far as the Browns, fuck it. I won't even have a run back.
Looking at it here, Jaden Daniels, 7,300. 64 for Scary Terry there, who hasn't been that scary really, but Jalen Hurts $100 less than Jaden Daniels. I know it's a blow up, but we always say this, like, how do they get there? Guess what? He runs it in, he can throw it. It's whatever. To your point, and I did just check it out, it looks like all these guys will be back. Makes it really tough. So sometimes you can just put them with one, like with a Devon, but you are burying some lineups at that point. Even though it's pretty condensed, it's kind of scary of what they are. And what, again, price is not too bad though. This could be more like the Burrow situation, right? You got Jalen Hurts, who not only he doesn't have to throw 5 because he could run 2 in.
Here's the problem though: the Browns will never push the Eagles to 41 points though.
That's the problem. The only thing is, look at these pace grades though. Plays. Let's see it, man. Let's see the opportunity.
They're always so fucking far behind. They're always running 30 plays in the fourth quarter when they're down 30 points.
They may just try and run these dudes all game too, just to keep Hurts off the field and try not to get buried. I did notice that I mentioned this on the Takedown Breakdown too, and you started the show with it, so I'll get your take. It's always good when we can hop on and chat about these things. But like last week, everyone was excited because finally we got points and we got scoring and we got touchdowns and like this. But if you go back to last week, it was like all the nut matchups. Like if you looked at the stone and you went back, that's what we did yesterday. It was like, wow, everyone kind of was it. Like even Trevor Lawrence, everyone hates on the guy, but it's like, if he's going to have a good game, it's going to be this matchup. Same for Flacco, same for these other dudes. So do you think there's anything with that? And like a spot like this, it could just be Ford trying to run the ball all game and the Browns trying to keep this as low as possible just to keep Hurts off the field?
I think Deshaun Watson's like cursed. I just think that as long as he's their quarterback, they have nothing. Now, maybe we're going to get some amazing news and it'll be Jameis Winston, right? He's the backup. Maybe they'll start him. And then all of a sudden this becomes like my favorite game of all time, right? Now I'm all in on this game. But as long as Deshaun Watson is the quarterback, not only do I have zero faith in any of the Browns, it also kind of kills my excitement about the Eagles because I know there's no chance they're going to get pushed. It's going to be 24-7 in the fourth quarter, and they're just going to be running zone reads up the middle to Barkley.
Yeah, it makes it tricky for sure. I think you're going to have to pick your spot here and decide. I'll look at it maybe in the tidbits or something. It'll come up by the end of the week with one of these other dudes that you could just feel good about it and just take your stand that way. You could also just play Jalen Hurts naked. We've seen it work. We literally just saw, Lamar Jackson naked lineup. Now he did have two guys running back on the other side, but I at least think that's something. Also last week, by the way, everybody wanted Amari Cooper at 6,200. He's still 6,000. I know it's against the Eagles, but I guess that would be just a point to bring up. I'm definitely not as excited about it now after seeing how another week played out. But this game, kind of interesting. 43-point total, nothing major. Titans at home versus the Colts. But I'm already hearing about some old Billie Jean, not my quarterback love at $4,800. Oh, Will Levis, but the Mayo Man at $4,800. Any thoughts on him and then the rest of this game in general?
I mean, the dude has shown, at least last year, he has one or two big games in him a year. We already saw the Colts this past week aren't afraid to get in a little bit of a shootout, especially when they have Flacco, who can actually throw a downfield pass and complete it. So I don't hate it, but I'm pretty sure our boy Richardson's going to be back this week, which is going to probably kill the pace of this game quite a bit, right? I mean, you can see the Colts are a pretty slow team, and the one time that they've actually had some pace to them is when Flacco was leading them. So if Richardson's in, I'm much less interested in Levi's. If Flacco's in, I would be much more interested in Levi's.
Yeah, I want to just see one thing quick because the chat just brought up a good point. I don't know how he's popping early on with projections and stuff. It does actually look like early, stuff with Kamara and stuff like that you can see out there. But just to note, the chat said, remember what Brian Robinson Jr. did last week in that previous game, that spot that we just talked about going up against the Browns. Could it just be Barkley off the bye? 8,200, just jam him in and see what he can do. He's getting 18 rushes per game. Rush defense isn't great, but or isn't horrible, but it did get beat up last week. So at least somewhat interesting there. We'll see how the week progresses. But I'm with you in this game here. Like again, it's hard to get super excited about it, but I could see why. It's almost the situation last week. It's the Trevor Lawrence spot for a quarterback at 4,800. You could single stack him. I know most would expect that you need to double stack him because that's how he gets there, but not necessarily in the sense because of his price tag, right? At 4,800, I think now you can get away with a single stack versus needing a double stack, but they do pass a bunch. We just saw Trevor Lawrence in this matchup. There is decent totals, 21 plus points for both sides. We talk about this all the time. It's like, yes, other teams, just above 26. It's only 5 points in the difference, but that's more than built into these price tags at 4,800 versus that. I know talent level is not the same, but we're looking for fantasy points. So definitely think it's at least somewhat interesting to talk about. Anything else you want to hit on there with the Colts Titans? If not, you could take us into the Chargers at the Broncos.
Just one last thought on the Colts. It's just so deflating when you see Anthony Richardson coming back and then you just see all those Colts wide receivers who are actually 4 deep at being pretty good. They have 4 legit wide receivers and all of their value takes a tremendous decrease in value with Richardson being back. It just sucks. It's crazy to think that Joe Flacco makes a wide receiver room, but that's kind of how it seems.
Yeah, we talked about that too. It's actually funny. It's Dalton is the same way. And I was making fun of the fact that those two quarterbacks used to have like what people called the worst contracts of all time. And now they're holding their teams together. Flacco came back to Cleveland last year, looked amazing. You got him still in Indy, still coming out, slinging it, got it to Pierce twice down the stretch, almost 2 touchdowns to him. One just fell short and then came back to him again the next round. And then the Dalton stuff, the minute he goes out and Bryce Young comes back in, it's like no action at all for Deontay Johnson or Chuba Hubbard. It's just mistake after mistake. And then Gang Green brought this one up before we move to the next game. But yeah, maybe if Levis gets popular, you could go to a guy like Pollard for some leverage there. Obviously a good matchup on paper. We liked ETN Jr. last week, even though it was kind of tricky. He popped a little bit for us, but it ended up being Bigsby. You just didn't have Tank Bigsby. Most didn't have Tank Bigsby, but maybe it's Pollard week.
That Pollard Spears. This year I've been really trying to avoid those running back situations that seem 50-50. And this one maybe a little, like 55-45 to Pollard, but it's still too close for me to really want to pay $6,000 for a guy that I think is going to only see about 55% of the opportunities.
And this is trending up. I know people say, "Oh, but it's 63-39." It's like, how did it get there? It was Spears getting more work. So it's kind of scary when it does come down to it. But let's move on. Let's go to the Chargers at the Broncos. Tough one, right? Division. But any thoughts early on this one? It's cheap price tags, but yeah, it's also pretty bad quarterbacks for what we've seen so far.
My first thought is it's an afternoon game, so if you just completely shit the bed in the morning and or the early games, and you need to get really weird in the afternoon, you're going to have plenty of options to switch to in this game because, just this is one of those games I keep telling you every week. I kind of look for 2 or 3 games that I just kind of X off of the slate. I just play none of it, and it's been working tremendously so far this year. And this is one of those games I look at it and I'm just like, who the hell am I trying to get a piece of in this game? And the answer is literally no one. Like I just X it off. And, I guess if things go really bad, maybe I could get into like a Justin Herbert, Lab McConkey stack or something like that. But if things are going that bad, I probably just give up on the day, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I don't think I love the previous game. People were just talking about if JT's out again, if you're going back to Sermon. I didn't even love him last week. Again, so far in the slate, though, I haven't seen a ton of running back options. So I guess maybe you could plug him into your pool.
Not at $6,000, man. He's just not a $6,000. Even when he has the backfield to himself, he's not a $6,000 running back.
That was the situation last week. He kind of had a better spot. It was 5,700, and you still were like, no, that's why no one went there, because we're like, even at that price, it's not appealing. It's not like we got the Tracy Jr. at 43.
Yeah, that's a different story.
Yeah, I agree. With you on this one, I guess it's such a tough game to get to. It's affordable, but these options kind of suck. If you wanted anything, the only guy I kind of like here as a one-off is Cortland Sutton. Still a fair price. He's been out there a ton. They are throwing the ball. He's getting the targets. It's kind of, could you see him have an okay game, and then you would be a guy that you could just plug in as a one-off at 5,300, but I don't really love that spot.
I would say that Cortland Sutton idea, I would nix it if I were you. Thank you.
I would nix it if I were you. Yeah. Well, you could also say if you were going that way to, instead of nixing it, put him in with Bo Nix, because the only way he probably gets there is dragging along, but at $5,400, but I don't like that. So I may just nix that idea to your original pun, but let's go on. Let's go to the Steelers at the Raiders, and the defense, $3,700 for the Steelers, but Fields has already been talked about in the chat. Other spots here, maybe you can get to. Bowers looked incredible last week. Maybe we'll get the Devontae Adams news this week. I know we got the Jets just fired their coach, so maybe that's the spot. I don't know. I'll have to wait and see. I heard the Ravens are in line for him. There's other teams lining up, the Bills, but thoughts on this Steelers-Raiders game, second of the afternoon games?
Another gross one, like another one that I don't like at all. If you were going to force me to get in here, I would consider Josh Fields stacks, but I've already seen 3 stacks that I like infinitely more than a Justin Fields stack. So this is just another game I'm going to struggle to find somebody, right? Like I was not impressed with Trey Tucker last week. Wasn't impressed with Madison. Bowers had the one really nice play. But outside of him, there's really not a lot of guys that I'm looking to target at DFS, because you need such high ceilings from your players that I just don't think that you're going to get many high ceiling plays from this game environment.
What about a Najee bounce back? Everybody liked him there last week, especially over on FanDuel, because he was so cheap. But with the running backs out, I'm not sure the exact situation this week for Warren.
You're never Mahomes. I'm never Najee.
Yeah, there you go. That one works better. Double N there.
Yeah, never Najee. Never
Najee. The matchup on paper, maybe. And if people get excited about Fields by the end of the week and Pickens and stuff like that, maybe you could go to Najee, but that's just an early thought. Najee with the Steelers. We just talked about Minshew getting crushed up and how they get after him. I know you're never him, but just saying, just in general, ideas for people to throw in out there. And then
are we sure that Minshew is even going to start this week? Isn't there? Didn't AOC finish the second half of that game? I thought I was watching.
Yeah,
so maybe he's going to get some run up there. And honestly, the offense had a little bit of a pulse when he was out there, and it's not like it's hard to be better than Garner Minshew.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see a couple of those things now live while we're on here, because obviously a true first look. We're going back through it, but I didn't see any news on Warren yet. I was checking him first. I don't know. All I can find on Minshew is that he was picking his nose on the sideline, eating it live on television. Wow.
Oh, tough look. Look.
That's not good. All right. Yeah. So moving on. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see on that one. But again, not something I'm super excited about anyway. These next couple of games, I guess, will be better to look at, but we'll see what your take is between the two of them. Let's start with Falcons at the Panthers here. What's your thoughts on this one?
Finally an afternoon game that I'm excited about. The Panthers, they're kind of like a dream matchup. They play no defense, and they typically do enough on offense. They struggled this last week, but even when they did that, they were still running their starters out there late into the fourth, even though when they were getting their asses kicked. So I'm pretty warm to the Panthers always, like not only playing Panthers in my lineups, but playing the team against them. And I think that they offer good run backs. And the last time we saw the Falcons, their offense finally looked like world beaters. So this is a game that I would be probably the most interested in the afternoon, just because I know this last game we're going to talk about is going to be insanely popular.
Yeah, this price seems insane. I don't care if you think he's good, bad, ugly, all of the above. Bijan Robinson, $6,600.
Yep.
I got to see if he gets popular or something like that, but I just don't care. That's way too cheap. Again, he's been disappointing. 11, 12, 16 fantasy points, but those are all one shoelace tackle away from being 20-point plus games. And at 6,600, maybe he does pick up steam because of that, but I see that right away. I know some are talking in the chat about Cousins having that big game last week, and is he going to be back because of that? And he's got the Londons, the Moonies, the Ray McLeods, Kyle Pitts, all that stuff. London will have to wait and see. He left that game at the end. I'm not sure if there's an update on him yet, but anything you want to add with the Bijan or Kirk Cousins stuff?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, to me, the more interesting play here would be an Andy Dalton stack, run it back with Bijan. Like, that sounds pretty interesting to me because Bijan is going to have that big game. It is coming up. And if he can't do it against the Panthers, I don't know when it's ever going to be. But to not have any Falcons in my lineup, like, I'll probably have a rule where I will force at least one Falcon into all my lineups because somebody from the Falcons is going to have a big game because it's against the Panthers. That's just a rule.
Yeah, Panthers real bad. So it'll be interesting to see.
Real bad.
Yeah, real bad. See how that one shakes out. But I definitely have early interest in that. And especially if there is any recency bias like the chat's mentioning where people go to the Cousins stacks, very easy for me just to move in on Bijan and just hope that he thrashes these guys. Already a great matchup. Everything going for them. I think it could be a good spot. And then the last game of the slate has the best afternoon. Is this the best total now on the slate? Let me double check that. But go ahead. You can talk about this one. It's Cowboys and Lions. I think now.
It looks like it's tied, right? 52.5. Wasn't that first one 52.5 also? If I'm doing my math right, they look like they're both around 52.5.
It is that. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, I mean, this game just, I'm very confident the Lions are going to do their part. I feel very confident that they will get to that 27-28 implied total. The Cowboys, I'm not so sure. I will say this just reeks of one of those afternoon games where everybody's going to play it. They're going to have 4 or 5 pieces of this in their lineup, and then the final score is going to be like, 28-7 or something like that, and it's going to be a huge disappointment. So I will say this game doesn't scare the shit out of me. Like one of those games, like I've got to have a piece of this game or I'm screwed, right? Like I'm not feeling that, but I do feel that way about the Lions. Like the Lions and the Falcons, I'm going to just have a whole bunch of. Like I'm going to have pieces of them in my lineups, and hopefully things go well early and I'll already have these chalky pieces in the afternoon. If not, maybe I'll switch over to a less owned piece or switch over maybe to the Panthers or God forbid the Cowboys players.
Yeah, I was going to just ask that since we have so much time left here and we don't have to go the whole hour, but just if people have more questions, throw them in the chat or stuff you think we didn't touch on. I thought this was funny from Jordan. I really could see that happening. Everyone's going to talk about the Cousins for recency bias and then Bijan's 35% and people all flip over to him and he ends up being super popular. Early look, he definitely does pop into the mix. Like some of the early guys popping at running back that I'm seeing across the industry are like Alvin Kamara, Najee Harris. Doesn't look like people are going to give Alvin Kamara a break. Bijan pops up, Chuba Hubbard in that game. But again, Andy Dalton is that we should note that. So let's start there. I'm going to comment a little on that last game, but I just looked it up. Andy Dalton, even with the way that game ended, is still going to be the starter. It says, so he's at 5,200 in that spot. I also think this is interesting. Again, it's all how the morning goes, like you said, DGen, but much cheaper, or not much, but $600 to $1,100 less for Dak Prescott than that Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson spot. 6,400 for Jared Goff. There is stackable options on these sides. Lamb, Tolbert popped in last game. Ferguson on this side. If you want the run game, you could plug in Dak, CD, and somebody else with one of Montgomery or Gibbs. Like there's definitely ways to go in that game. So there's those two. The Cousins stuff we talked about. I'm not that you were, I'm saying, but I'm not really as much as the chat was in love with Fields. A cheap Will Levis. We talked about that. Jalen Hurts for $100 less than Jaden Daniels. Baker, I had a little bit of early love for. Kyler and Love, definitely in that game. So maybe I am going to be okay with my early take and see where this ownership goes on this first game. But do you have any extra thoughts after looking through all the games now of how you sort of think it's going to shake out and what you might be doing?
Well, just last week, I was able to find 4 or 5 guys that I liked that were right around like $4,000. Tracy at 4,300, There was plenty of guys. There's no shortage of guys that I was finding that I was comfortable playing last week around $4,000, which, when you have those guys in your lineup, it makes building good lineups so much better, right? Mm-hmm. But this week, I'm not really seeing those guys. Like, I just going through here, there wasn't a lot of dudes. Like, even the dudes that you think might be a good value are all getting priced up. Like, literally everybody else. Jaden Reed's priced up to 7,000. Wicks is up to 5,200. They priced up Tank Dell to 6,200. It just seems like everybody got priced up. Like, DraftKings is catching on. They're not pricing the quarterbacks where they are, but where they should be, but everybody else they are. And with that, I'm getting a little nervous about, like, how the hell am I going to build my lineups this week? Because I'm not seeing those free squares that I was this past week. So that's what's really consuming my thoughts at the moment.
Yeah, it stood out to me as well. I was just going to say that. Like, I named a bunch of quarterbacks I can feel good with. Once you have your quarterbacks, you can kind of figure out, how you're stacking them with which pass catchers, if you want doubles or triples or whatever it is you're looking at. But didn't see it with the running backs, and maybe that's why the early stuff around the industry is still in on Alvin Kamara, potato, Bijan Robinson, Najee Harris, just going with those spots. And I think as the week goes on, this one will certainly pop up. I mean, we got an F here on the Stone. The Stone's the best tool in DFS. If you don't have it, go to SHIPIT Nation and get it, because this is what sets you up for success as the week goes on. It's barely filled out yet, but this is just a starting point. I do think that is somewhat interesting. So maybe people land there. The Najee stuff up against the D+, could see that. Pollard I saw pop a little. I'm with you, kind of worried more about the Spears stuff. That's a D+. Kamara's going against the D. I see this stuff. I think it's really, people are going with the matchups. That's what they're seeing, right? And that's where they're going to get after. I do worry, like I said, a little bit about this Ravens-Commanders game. We'll see, though. It depends if the ownership actually gets there. I guess a second thought for you then. Last week, the Ravens and Bengals didn't get super popular even after the Stone loved it. And we talked about it. We spent 10, 15 minutes on it on the show because people don't like stacking up Lamar Jackson. Is it Flowers? It ended up being Bateman. Is it going to be Likely or Andrews or the Kohler Bear now, who they renamed this guy? He got in there. And then even on the other side, it's like, okay, Terry McLaurin, Jaden Daniels. Do you really want Ertz? Do you really want to risk McCaffrey for large field tournaments and hope that he has a big game? He's getting a couple catches here and there. But what's your take on that?
But the stacking Lamar, or what are we talking? What was your question?
Do you think this game actually gets as popular as it originally seems, or is it just one that people talk about?
I think the Commanders get as popular. I don't think the Ravens do. I think it's going to be the Commander side is going to be very popular. So I think it's going to be more the team is going to be popular than the game is going to be popular. I think the most popular game will probably be that Cowboys and Lions. But as soon as I say that, most of the pieces in that game that people are going to want to play are not cheap. So I'm not seeing the discounts where you're going to save the money to be able to get 4 or 5 pieces from the Lions and Cowboys game. So this actually seems like the tightest pricing week I can remember. Like, I'm just building lineups in my head and I'm coming like $2,000 over on all of them. That's
the note, right? Until we get some running back value, we don't, if we do, unless we do, is a better way to put it. We don't have the 3,500 Tucker Kraft. We don't have the 4,300 Tracy Jr. And so even though these quarterback prices are being kept in check to what we've just seen all season, it's like the minute you put them in with Lamb, even if you're going a Jameson Williams or a David Montgomery on the other side for a little bit of savings, Ferguson's $5K. Tolbert is $5K. These prices are up there. Maybe it's Turpin that you go with, but then it doesn't feel as good because the snap share, the targets, all that. Is it possible? Yes. Cooks is out, all these things. But my point would be, you nailed it. Like, that's really what it comes down to. And then even some of the running backs in the better spots, there is potential for splits. What if Warren's back for Harris? We already talked about Spears with Pollard. So I would say the pricing is fair, but why it becomes super tight and restrictive early in the week is because we don't really have any sign of the value, and we don't really have any sign of it showing up either.
That makes Andy Dalton and old Will Levi's jeans a lot more appealing, because not only are they very cheap themselves, but they also have pretty affordable stackable options with them, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially like even Ridley here.
Ridley would be the one I would probably go with. I'd probably just single stack him and then do part of him Hopkins, part of him Ridley.
Yeah, and if you do that, you just get away with whatever you want because you're in for, well, it's less than 10K for Levis and Hopkins. It's 9,900. Best Buy pricing for a combo pack of DeAndre. Didn't DeAndre Hopkins used to be like 8,700 when he played for the Texans back in the day?
He would often be the most expensive wide receiver on the slate.
Yeah. Any thoughts on this? Yeah, we already talked about it. That's why we're saying like Turpin or somebody could be a play for sure. And, again, people will force it in there, and I won't worry about that as much right now. But Kenny says about that game, feels like it could be a massive trap to me. Lions just run it. Clocks ticks off little by little, but full game stack, he won't be on. I think that's definitely a possibility. And then it gets more scary because Montgomery and Gibbs are both priced at that price.
And to Kenny's point, it's just like last week. Like, yeah, you're going to, if you want to full stack that game, like you're putting almost all of your salary towards that game, right? Because the pieces you're going to want to stack are going to be very expensive. And then you basically are playing like 4 punts from other games. So you would need that game to literally be like another 41-38 type game and have all your pieces hit, and then hope that your punts hit from the other games so that you could afford the prices of those Cowboys and Lions that you put in your lineup.
Yeah, you almost get forced into whatever the early value is automatically. Once you go, even if you go Dak, Lamb, Ferguson with one of Montgomery or Gibbs, your money's used. Like you've got quite a bit all in now on the table on 4 spots. Great game environment, no doubt. But then it's like, okay, now you're just sort of filling in the pieces with the same as everybody else. I do think, Chris, this would be more of a late swap. I coined this week, a new Tamboism, a late swap opportunity. It's an opportunity to late swap to a guy that is in a popular game that not anybody is really on. So there's your swap opportunity of the week, would be somewhere that you can get into that game that others aren't going to. And Dowdle, regardless of how ownership shakes out, is most certainly in that camp. It's just there's too much other stuff going on within that game for him to be super popular. So I definitely think that could be a thing.
I see Evan over there in the chat saying that Ray and Bateman are the only value. And like, if that's what the value is this week, well, then there's no value, because I have zero interest in playing the 3rd wide receiver from the Falcons or like the 3rd or 4th passing option for the Ravens. Like, those just not guys that interest me.
I didn't see that comment, but I will say that just going back up
boom, that one.
Ray and Bateman only value. I wonder, was he just talking during that game? No, it seems like he was. We were talking about the Ravens at that point, so other stuff. So okay, but I guess that would be the thing, is if you're going to Cousins stacks, that's another thing too. DGen is like Cousins. If Bijan becomes more popular by the end of the week because there just is no good running back plays that pop up, that would happen. Probably leaves Cousins because the ownership does always get spread out. We'll wait on the London news, but are people going to actually go to Mooney, McLeod? Stuff like that. So I mean, you could double stack that one up with Mooney, McLeod, or Mooney, McLeod, Pitts. Pick 2 of the 3, and then you don't even need to run it back with the Panthers and just move on.
Because as we know, you never want naked Cousins.
I don't know. That's another one you can have, but I'm just saying I don't think.
You don't even know the college football streets. You don't remember old Hendon Hooker. We always played a naked Hooker. We were always big.
Yeah, I did hear that guy, so I do know what you're talking about now. Yeah, that's why I was wondering when you brought it up, but I was going to say. It's all going to depend on London for that even still, though, because if somehow London's in at 6,700, that changes it up now again anyway, because now you're back at 62, 67, and then 53 or 44. But I guess this stack has the chance to pick up steam just because it's a good matchup, and it's one that actually fits and allows you to still have money left over to play the good plays. So, something else I might factor in, just looking at the overall slate. You always want to take the whole slate into consideration. While that last game looks really good, it doesn't help your lineup necessarily beyond the other spots.
And I think there's a chance Jonathan Brooks might be for the Panthers might start getting ramped back up this week. So, he's not going to have a very big role, but he is they did activate him off the PUP list.
Yeah, and that's already a mess too, because it's another one where you're still seeing Sanders out there more than enough. Kind of like the Spears-Pollard thing.
Chuba Hubbard's good. I don't know why they're rushing Jonathan Brooks back. Like, Chuba Hubbard's awesome.
Yeah, people seem to think he could be that spot too, but just to go back to that and finish up my thought, I just want to try and explain it a little bit better. I don't feel like I did, but just to say, kind of like what I said with the Burrow stuff last week, you brought it up and then I hit it. Like, once you went to those 4, Burrow, Higgins, Chase, and I know Zay or Henry could work, but I think a lot of people went to Henry when they went to that game. You did just land in the spot of Tucker Kraft, the Broncos D, a Slayton, or something like that, where you just had very popular 2v2s and 3v3s. I would worry about that on this slate the same as it currently stands, where if you are in on the Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, pick one with one guy from the Lions, you almost get forced into like find the best values everywhere else. And you kind of, even if that game does hit and go off and do what you want, you've backed yourself into a corner, not where you're necessarily going to be duped because you got to fill out 9 spots, but you are putting yourself into a corner on that lineup versus if you had something like a Levis Ridley or a Kirk Cousins Mooney if London's out or something like that, and then fill it out and have even more flexibility while not being in on the exact same popular spots that everybody else is.
Agreed.
Anything else? Anything else you want to hit on before we get out of here?
I mean, I'm excited to get back after it. This was like the first week all year where I didn't go into the afternoon with a big sweat, right? The day got off to a good start. I had some T. Higgins and I had Nico Collins. I was like, oh, shit, we're kicking ass. I still have my Jordan Love stacks all waiting for the afternoon. I was feeling good. And then that Colts and Jags game went off. And then, of course, the Bengals game went off, and I was like, oh, well, now we're dead. And it was kind of the first time all year I didn't go into the afternoon with like thinking I could win a GPP today. So I'm ready to get back after it this week and hope that I don't whiff on the game that's the slate breaker.
Yeah, I agree. And this is another one here. Just we talked a little bit about that too. That's another spot. Could consider it. Just again, it's all how the slate shapes out. Maybe it's just Baker with Godwin or Baker with Evans, and you just hope they get there. You don't have to do that. That's another quick thing I'll add. Everybody saw Burrow doubles, like Burrow with Chase and Higgins go off last week. You will see those stacks much more prevalent than even normal this week because everyone just assumes that's how you have to build now because it worked last week. So some of those skinny stacks with just the quarterback and one receiver, certainly an interesting way to go this week, especially when you don't have a ton of values like we're saying right now, because then you can just start to plug in and still keep a little bit of leverage in there that you can build it that way. We'll talk more about that as the week goes on. If you guys are not a member yet, go over to SHIPIT Nation. We've got you covered for everything. ShipTomizer's up for 6 of the major sports. NHL is back. We've got NASCAR, MMA, college football, huge every week. Have a stone for that. We just talked about that. If you want to just get the free email education course, you can sign up here with your email, click send me lesson 1. And with Amazon Prime Days on, we did do an Amazon Prime deal, our own version to bring in NHL coming back. It's not for NHL packages. We don't have those. It's for any membership that you want to use. You can use NHL 15, lock in 15% off any of those memberships, the All Access, ShipTomizer, even just to check it out for a week. Do it. Get in there. Save yourself the time. Get involved. Find out all the good stuff that we've got on the site. But I think it's going to be another good week for SHIPIT Nation. That's going to do it for this one, guys. For DGen, for myself, ToeTagginTambo, let's ship it.